People who have accidentally caused the death of another person. What happened? When I was younger playing Xbox whilst at my grandparents' house, I had left the room to go to the bathroom, leaving my wired controller on the floor. I suddenly hear a thud and decided to finish my business before seeing where it had came from. Whilst cleaning up, I heard a scream from my grandma and was told to stay in the bathroom, and so I did. Found out that my grandfather had accidentally stood on my controller and fell over the wire, cracking his skull open on the table, and was announced dead at the scene when the ambulance arrived. I am now extra cautious with where I leave items, encouraging my younger brother and sister to clear up their mess once they're done. As part of my job, I work with seniors to improve their reflexes and balance. These are things that degrade with age. In most demographics, falls kill more older adults than anything other than heart disease and cancer. People with good balance and quick reflexes rarely seriously injure themselves from a fall. Your grandfather in his younger years could have recovered from his misstep, or could have gotten his arms out in front of him in time. Frailty, decline, and bad luck killed your grandfather, not you. It could have been a crack in a sidewalk. When I was 18, I was working the night shift in a nursing home as an aide. Part of my job was to turn the paralyzed patients every 2 hours to make sure they didn't get bed sores, etc. This one particular resident had late-stage Parkinson's diseases and her muscles and joints were stiff and brittle, and she was catatonic. As I was flipping her from one side to another, I applied light pressure to her leg to move her back a bit, and this snapped her femur. Given her age and health, the doctors decided that surgery was dangerous and she would have to heal on its own, if at all. Because of this, we could no longer flip her, which resulted in bed sores. She eventually went septic from those bed sores and died of septic shock. I always felt so bad about that. When I was 4 years old, my mother was roughly 3-4 months pregnant. One day I was supposedly crying and throwing a tantrum over a toy or something. My mother tried to comfort me by cradling me in her arms and take me to my room, which was up the stairs, but I cried and kicked so much that she lost her balance and fell down the stairs. I was unhurt and mother recovered without any lasting injuries, but my sibling died. I'm not sure if this counts, but I wanna get it off my chest after reading these. My friend was a well-known and liked guy, very social, did drama, football and baseball in high school. Some of the best moments of my life was with him. One day he just stopped coming around. He would read my messages but not reply. He ignored anyone else. It was so bizarre. One day, he came to my house and it was like the good old days. He said he got into target shooting but his gun blew up because he fired a bullet that had been in the washing machine. He had some powder burns on his hands. He asked to borrow one of my guns and I said yes. 2 days later he shot himself with it. I've hated myself since. Most of our mutual friends hate me. His family hates me and I was barred from his funeral. I feel so bad I didn't see the signs. I miss you, Tom. I wish I could have helped you like you did me. Also, thank you all so much for your words of support. I wish people here could see things how you did. It's taken years but I no longer blame myself for what happened. It still haunts me. He was being himself that day, laughing, joking and making plans for us to hang out more. I let him borrow the gun without a second thought because I got lost in the moment, plus as soon as I said yes, he carried on like it was no big deal. We grew up with guns. A lot of people don't see that. Most never asked. To them, I'm the piece of shit who gave him the gun. Plus Tom was very popular person and I never was. So I guess it's easier for them to demonize me. It still hurts though. I wish I could have talked to him about how he was feeling. I wish he'd shown a sign of sadness. Something to clue me in. Every day, I spend time playing the what if game. I get everyone who knew him lost someone special, but so did I. And it's like I'm not allowed to grieve for him publicly. When I was 4 and visiting Japan, I opened back door of a car in Japan to the sidewalk, but a motorcyclist driving in that space between the curb and road slammed into it. Blood everywhere. I don't remember the exact aftermath since I was so young, but everybody was screaming and I just sat there not understanding exactly what was happening until my mom ran off the scene and into the building in tears. Thanks for the kind words, everyone. I don't blame it on anyone, even myself, as it was just a really unfortunate circumstance. As for the thing regarding my parents as discussed below, don't worry about that either. They are out of my life. But honestly, while I do believe my parents did some really crap shit to me, I don't wanna be angry at them. I'm here now and by myself, and I think the best course of action is just to put them and this ugly event out of my head. Unless it's to tell you curious folks. Thanks for the kind words and reassurance. Was skiing with a friend when I was still living in Colorado. We were going a good speed and enjoying the mountain. When we came back onto the main trail he was still going really fast. I yelled at him to slow down and an elderly lady ended up merging at the same time as he looked back at me. My buddy is a good sized guy and ended up colliding with this old woman. The ski patrol ended up grabbing her from the mountain and she was clearly in a lot of pain. She ended up dying from her injuries a few days later. After their investigation my buddy and the woman were both in the wrong. He had to pay some fines but never got any sort of lawsuit. 7 A sham on a Sunday morning. I'm heading to work in a small town at the age of 15 or 16. Come over a crest on a hill and have no time to react. T-boned someone making an illegal U-turn in a driveway. All I remember is veering off to the right and damaging someone's stone wall after the hit. Crawling out of the wreckage out of breath and stumbling to see if the other person was okay. Their vehicle spun multiple times and landed in a ditch facing away, but driver side visible from where I originally was. Driver wasn't there. Move along the vehicle and check the other side. Driver is hanging out of the passenger side window with a steady stream of blood from their skull. Bottom line for me is that I ask and implore everyone, please use your seatbelt. Deployed in Afghanistan, urban area. I got into programming to kill the time. Had an Arduino set complete with everything I would need to make tons of little gadgets. Got pretty good at it too. Going to school for it when I get out. When it came time to go home, I didn't have room to take the kit with me, so I threw it out. Keep in mind, locals work on this base, and in my time there, at least 3 had been kicked out for ties with the Taliban. Within an hour of tossing the kit, it had been taken. Didn't think anything of it. Probably some other soldier thought it was cool and took it. Big base. Anything could happen. About 3 weeks after we left, an IED went off outside the gate. No NATO casualties, but about 20 civilians died in the blast. EOD reported that it was a strangely sophisticated bomb. They used my kit. My negligence gave them the means to kill 20 innocent people. I've never told anyone in the world about this, and it haunts me to this day. War survivor from Chechnya 94-96 war. I told a girl, maybe 17-year-old, to run out from the apartment building because I was so sure it was going to collapse. It didn't collapse, and she ran out into a hail of gunfire and died. I was so scared that I stayed in the building and it just never collapsed the entire time. So I left out the back. I often think about that. It was such a quick decision. She was right near the door. I was on my way out because the building felt like it was shaking, and I saw her and said run out, the roof is gonna fall, and she ran out in a hurry and got blown apart by gunfire, shrieking in pain until she was hit again and presumably died. I wish I didn't tell her that obviously. It still sort of haunts me to this day, especially her screaming. But I also know that I made the decision in goodwill, trying to save her life, and to be fair the building really felt like it was going to collapse, and everyone was running out, not just me. Anybody would have told her to run as well. Nobody knew they were opening fire on the building. I know it sounds like lame justifications but it is all I can think of to help ease my mind. Anybody would have done the same, I hope at least. I was working in a nursing home as a volunteer. He was a painter. He told me to bring him oil paints, canvas and thinner, and he would paint something for me. The next week when I had to return I was excited to see what he'd painted, but he was no longer there. The nurses told me that they came to pick him up. I think he drank the thinner at night. Who was they? I think it was a term the nurses used to not tell me he had died. I was 17 at the time. They said Lovini Runabuska, which roughly translates to they came to pick him up, as if they was his family, which he never talked about. 2 years ago, my sister was working at a dealership. Her husband and I were spending the day together until it was time to pick up sis from work. He had been drinking tall boys all day, so when it came time to get his gal I took the keys and said I'm driving. He was mad enough that he refused to go with me. When I came back with my sister he was nowhere to be found. But it was common for him to go on walks to calm himself down, so we didn't think much of it. 8 AM the next morning, state police were banging on the door. They told us he was struck and killed by a train while he was sleeping on the tracks. I was dating this girl that was a little dysfunctional due to being sexually abused by her grandpa and nobody knew about it. I noticed some red flags and got her to open up and tell me about it. After we broke up, I told her mom she should stop inviting grandpa over to Thanksgiving dinners due to the sexual abuse. The mom called me a liar, but after asking the other daughter's cousins about it, they confirmed it was true and that they had all been molested too. After word got back to grandma, she said, "I'll take care of it." Fast forward a week and grandpa is dead. Apparently grandpa had a lot of serious medications he was taking and grandma messed with the dosage, which killed him. His death was ruled natural cause and nothing ever happened to grandma. I'm at least partially responsible for 3 deaths, so I'm a weather forecaster. A few years ago I was forecasting for Afghanistan. Now, we were doing these forecasts from a base in the States, which means we had to coordinate our forecast with someone who was deployed to Afghanistan. Sometimes the downrange forecaster was really experienced, other times they weren't. It was a mixed bag. Anyway, I had been forecasting for this region for at least 2 years at the time of this incident. I was familiar with it, and I was actually in a supervisory capacity, simply overseeing all of the forecasts going out in my zone. Well, one day I was talking with one of my forecasters about the potential for large hail and how I'd like him to put that in his forecast. Now that's a big thing to put in a forecast because of how operationally significant it is. Aircraft must be put in hangars, missions are cancelled, assets must be protected, etc. So when it came time to discuss this with the downrange forecaster, he was absolutely against it. He didn't want to brief that to the commander because again, missions have to be cancelled based on what you think will happen. If you're wrong, you've set back a lot of people and wasted a lot of time. So the deployed forecaster tries to argue against it, but his reasoning really just boiled down to I don't want to brief that. So when I wasn't looking, he essentially just pulled rank on my junior forecaster and forced him to take it out of the forecast. And so it went out to the base with no hail in it, only hinting at some vicinity thunderstorms. Well, when I noticed I was pissed, but I said screw it, we'll let him be wrong. This was the first time I'd ever wanted to put large hail in a forecast. Maybe we were over forecasting it. Nope. Basically right on schedule. A huge thunderstorm popped up and dumped large hail on the base. It did a few million in damage to aircraft, injured a helo pilot who was pre-flighting his bird, and killed 3 Afghan National Army soldiers who had left on a patrol and couldn't find any cover. They wound up beaten to death by hail. That has always bugged me. They didn't need to die. We knew the potential was there and I basically just let an incorrect forecast go out that got them killed. So I'm a mental health worker who has recently had a patient kill themselves. They sadly aren't my first and won't be my last. I followed protocol and didn't do anything medically wrong, but will always feel personally responsible for them. There were signs I missed, lies I believed, and things I do differently in hindsight. Some of the families put cases against the hospital, but I've been cleared of any wrongdoing. Unfortunately, when you have the riskiest cases, then you can't win all the time. That doesn't stop me feeling incredibly sad when it happens and imagine the family grieving for a lost son, brother, father. I will always remember their names and have planted a tree in each of their honor. I strive to become a better nurse each time. I was driving a small car pulled in front of me and slammed their brakes. I couldn't stop in time. My truck wound up on top of their car. I was the only survivor of the vehicles involved.